Hi everyone. Today I want to tackle a tough topic that every student has to deal with at some point. Every student will at some point make mistakes in their work, get a bad grade, struggle in class, fail to get something they applied for like a position, a scholarship, whatever. It's inevitable. It happens to all of us. Unfortunately, I think in college and universities today, the mental aspect of education is not given enough attention. There are of course usually resources available, like advisors or counselors, but generally you go to them once you have hit a problem point. They aren't really there as a preventive measure for your mental struggles in school. And of course, things have a different impact on different individuals. What might be devastating to one student might be a normal outcome to another. And so to manage those expectations requires nuance and special attention to each person's characteristics. However, there is some general advice that applies to everyone. That is that you are human, you are not fault-free, you will make errors, you will fail, and you cannot just avoid it from happening altogether. You can only do two things: recognize when you have failed, and make adjustments going forward. Now this first part is harder than it sounds. Recognizing that you have failed has two things at play. It means that you had a goal and you didn't achieve that goal, and that the failure was yours, not someone else's. Sometimes when we don't end up with what we wanted, we will rationalize that what we got was what we wanted, or that what we didn't get wasn't important enough anyway, so it was never really the goal, or something to that effect. What we are doing is called changing the goalposts. While doing this can be soothing for the pain of not getting what you wanted in the short term, it's ultimately not beneficial in the long term. You're better off recognizing the failure than painting it as a victory to yourself, because closing the gap on achieving that actual original goal will be stunted if you do not reflect on the outcome appropriately. And getting into this habit of changing the goalposts after the fact can get addicting, and it can begin to influence your wider self-confidence and objectives. When you accurately reflect that the goal you set was not met, you will also need to recognize that the failure was yours. It's again soothing to rely on excuses to mitigate the pain. I wasn't feeling well, the professor was biased, the interviewer didn't understand my questions, they emailed me late, etc. Just like changing the goal after the fact. Justifying your misfortune with the blame of others lets you cop out of properly reflecting on what you did wrong. Now, of course, I'm not saying it's not possible for your efforts in something to be fundamentally derailed by the intervention of some third party. Sometimes genuinely you gave it your all and you were hard done by something completely unforeseen and unfair. But the reality is that most times that is the exception and not the rule. If you look at everything you did, all your inputs into whatever endeavor you took on that didn't work out, there are things that you could have changed and you should have done differently, but you will entirely miss that point if you pin the failure on someone else or something else. There could be a situation that even if the intervening actor was not involved, you still would have failed on the basis of your own actions. Your goal has to be to prevent failures of your own doing, because you cannot predict or control the actions of others, and the only way to do that is to recognize when a failure is your own. Once you become comfortable enough with yourself to recognize when you have failed, it becomes imperative to figure out where the adjustments need to be made going forward. If you don't do this second step, though you accept you suffered a failure of your own doing, you become prone to acquiescing or accepting these failures at face value. You might think, well, I'm just a human, it was a bad day, on to the next one. And again, that can be possible since you may have done everything right. That can be the case, but you have to do some analysis first before you can reach that conclusion. For instance, let's say you made a big mistake on a test, and that caused you to lose a lot of marks and end up with a poor grade. Well, what caused you to make that mistake? Did you improperly recall some of the material? Were you feeling particularly nervous and unprepared for this test? Did you take too long to do some of the earlier questions and thus had to rush through this question where you made the mistake? Depending on the answer to why you made the mistake on the test, there are things that you should have done differently. For instance, how you studied and what parts of the course you focused on and how you dealt with stress and anxiety before the test and how much repetition you did to build speed in answering the questions. The fact that you made a mistake on the test in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. It hurts, sure, but what can heal that hurt is that now you know you have a bunch of things to take into consideration the next time you write a test. Lingering on the grade or what could have been does nothing for you. You found out that you're human. Like everybody else, you fall down sometimes. But what everybody else doesn't do is get back up as fast as they can and learn why they fell and try to never fall that way again. This is an internal struggle that every student goes through. It's not really talked about in any course or anything you do in college or university. But I think the mental aspect is just as important as anything else in your experience. Let me know in the comments what your struggles and recovery experiences were in your academic journey. Until next time.